What you remember is you used to drive that old busted joint. See, I drive the new hotness. Old and busted, new hotness.
Hello everyone, today we are talking about Ogryn. Now, I could just do a, here's the update, breakdown, point by point, this is what Fat Shark's saying, which I will do, but I want to also use this video as an opportunity to set a benchmark for the Ogryn, to immortalize what the Ogryn was and what its issues were before we leave that all in the past, because as some of you, many of you, especially now that you've clicked on the video, may know, we are leaving Ogryn behind, the current version of it behind, and moving on to a revamped Ogryn on the 25th of March. So, if you're watching this in the future, you can actually watch this video and see what the old Ogryn tree used to be like. And so I want to first start by talking about what longtime players have ascertained the problems with Ogryn to be, why he's receiving the rework. Because I could totally understand there being newer players, or perhaps inexperienced players, who have played Ogryn and said, you know, he's just fine. What's the issue with him? I don't think the issues will reveal themselves in the first difficulties of the game. I don't think they'll reveal themselves in the first hours. But those of you who have challenged higher difficulties, and especially those of you who have played other classes than Ogryn, will seriously understand the deficits that he is playing with. And I think that this update, not to spoil it too much, but I think this update goes a long way towards bridging that gap. And time remains to tell whether or not this will bring it into full parity with the other, powerful classes like Zealot and Veteran. But this is going to make him much, much closer, and it's going to be much more engaging to make builds around him because they're changing some of his weapons as well. And in this video, I will not be discussing his weapon tweaks because that's just going to make the video way too long. It's already going to be long as it is going through his full talent tree here. So this video will be part of 2. I'll release a second one probably in a day or so. And that one will go over the weapon changes and how we can expect to see that meta shape out. This one is going to focus solely on his skill tree and his talents and his overall balance in that regard. So, with that being said, if you like this sort of content, if you like analytical content, if you like Darktide content, I'm your guy. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Mr. E, and you should like and subscribe. And leave a comment and let me know what you're most excited to see about this change to Ogryn, and perhaps what you'd like to see in the future. Anyway, let's get into it. So, since we're losing this old version of Ogryn in just a few short weeks, I figured let's use this time to immortalize the older Ogryn and put it down on paper once and for all, or in video format rather, once and for all, what many in the community assess his main issues to be. And I think first and foremost amongst these issues is his lack of build options. Most of this comes down to a very underwhelming number of blue nodes in the tree that can actually shape your different play styles and play skills, and the lack of interconnectivity between these. So this all starts at the top of the tree, right up here, where you cannot choose between soften them up or slam of your own free will. Any of these lead to any ability, correct? But the blitzes are inherently tied to one or the other. And since many players have found that soften them up is the far superior skill because it causes all enemies to take 15% more damage after you melee attack them, Bombs Away and Frag Bomb have become the preeminent grenade choices, really leaving Big Friendly Rock in the dust. Which is a shame because Big Friendly Rock is very unique in this game, and a lot of people thought it was like the best for a long time, and then Soften Them Up came along and stomped all over that. We also have this issue, same issue down here further in the tree. If you wanted to take Point Blank Barrage, and then you wanted to swap over to this left side and get Batter, which is one of the Ogryn's strongest melee skills, you cannot do that, because this lower hanging V here means you can't path back upwards and get Batter. And as we can see down at this bottom of the tree, once you've selected a progression path, you are forced to take a very linear path. There are not choices to getting to the bottom of the tree, which is a real shame. That is all being fixed in the new Ogryn tree. As we can see here, all the blitzes are interconnected, which means you can choose any blitz with no point tax. You can choose any ability with no point tax, and they are all connected in a downward manner. So yes, if you do indeed choose Point Blank Barrage, you can come down this way, you can go all the way across, and you can come down and get Bonebreaker's Aura. You're not going to be missing out on anything except for these nodes all the way over here, right? So much better interconnectivity and plenty of interconnectivity at the bottom down here. I love this new approach. They had lots of interconnectivity for talents in the Psyker's current iteration, and I think they did a good job of making there be lots of interesting choices, and I'm very, very excited to see what builds we can make with the new Ogryn. The second main issue that faces modern day Ogryn is that of lack of defense. This is supposed to be the defensive class, it's supposed to be the tank class. However, a lot of his abilities leave him wide open to attack and damage and even death, and he doesn't have a whole lot of ways of regenerating his toughness as other classes do. He has some fairly decent options for generating toughness at the very top of the tree with the best defense and Smash 'em, regenerating 20% toughness, and farther down the tree he has Feel No Pain, which regenerates toughness when you're in coherency with allies, which is fairly poor, and reduces damage that you take. Stay Close, which is also coherency regeneration, which is very poor. And then his only other large toughness regenerating ability is from Heavy Hitter, which can regenerate double toughness on melee kills. So that means that when you kill an enemy in melee, instead of gaining 5% toughness, you'll gain 20 plus the 20, or you'll gain 10, sorry, plus the 20% we have up here. So he's really lacking for defensive options. Generally, the rule of thumb with Ogryn is you need to be staying on the offensive. If you are not actively attacking enemies, you're not regenerating your toughness, and therefore you're going to start taking damage. And on lower difficulties, this can be fine, but on higher difficulties, where your toughness can be shredded in a matter of seconds, it is absolutely not fine. And he's completely shown up in this regard by the other classes, one of which has a button he can press to regain all of his toughness instantly and overcap his toughness with gold toughness once every 30 seconds at maximum.
Welcome to the Salty Spittoon. How tough are you?
How tough am I? How tough am I? I had a bowl of for breakfast this morning.
Yes, so?
With
right this way. Sorry to keep you waiting. Welcome to the Salty Spittoon. How tough are you?
How tough am I?
wow.
The other classes have lots of abilities that fill their toughness up or make themselves invisible. The Psyker can fill his whole toughness bar just by shooting his staff into a horde of enemies. The Ogryn is the person, or the abhuman, sorry, so not subhuman, but abhuman, who is the odd man out. He has to get into melee and then start hitting enemies in the face in order to get his toughness back, which is a fine design, but he needs to be generating a lot more toughness in order to make up for the risk that he incurs by getting into melee in the first place. So we'll put that on the board as a second main detraction. He's kind of frail. He's in danger of taking damage. The third thing that holds Ogryn back by my and many other players' estimate is Ogryn's lack of damage, or his lack of variety in ways to deal damage. There are pretty much 3 Ogryn builds that are going to do any sort of damage. One is to swing a pickaxe. The second is to apply bleed stacks through the use of the shield and heavy attacking. And the third is to go full Rambo with the twin leg stubber and stack burn stacks on bosses. Outside of those, the Ogryn doesn't have many options for damage, and that's because he has some problems with the designs of his weapons. Now, we won't be getting into weapons in this video, but we will be getting into some tweaks to his baseline stats that might help him out here. The problem with the Ogryn's weapons is that they are not statted for critical or weak spot hits, and that is something that all the other classes can use and abuse to their advantage. If you think about the most powerful weapons in the game, they tend to gravitate towards getting big rewards when you have enough skill and ability to land weak spot hits, which makes sense, right? If we evaluate a weapon like the Rashad, which is a combat axe that all the human classes have access to, we can see here that the finesse stat offers not only attack speed, but also it offers headshot damage multiplier, which is awesome. Lets us know that this weapon attacks faster, and it's going to do a lot of damage when we're going to execute enemies with our attacks. The Ogryn's club, I believe you call it Mark I here, also has a finesse stat. You would think it would offer the same stats. However, as we see upon inspecting here, the weapon does not offer that same headshot multiplier, which means that Ogryns are not incentivized to go for headshots with their weapons. Ogryns were designed with the thought that Ogryns are not smart enough to theoretically aim for the head, to think to aim for the head, so they're just going to bludgeon the body and will try to buff their damage to get them into the same ballpark. Unfortunately, with the insanity of the critical multiplier that exists on many of the best weapons in the game, the Ogryn's weapons are falling very, very far behind, and his talents don't really help that either. So that's a really big issue for Ogryn's dealing damage on the melee side. On the range side, the problem is that there's only a few slim pickings for Ogryn, and his range kit doesn't really complement many of these weapons at all. In fact, the ranged keystone pretty much only reinforces twin link stubber playstyles, and he only has a couple of weapons that can really be incentivized to be used with point blank barrage, his ranged ultimate. So we hope to see some changes to these ranged weapons to bring them up to par with some of the absolute insanity for ranged weapons that the other classes can bring to bear. And finally, the fourth and final issue that many players have when they are learning Ogryn or when they are just swapping to Ogryn from having played and learned another class is his general clunkiness. Ogryn is a big boy. He likes to get stuck on lots and lots of things. He can't barely hop over rails half of the time. And when you're playing around enemies, and enemies are surrounding you on all sides as they tend to do, it can get very, very tricky to maneuver your large frame. It also is very, very tricky to get around any sort of situation without taking immense amounts of damage because all of his abilities leave him wide open. If you use point blank barrage, you're walking around with your range weapon out, and therefore enemies are going to attack you. If you are using taunt, well, taunt doesn't have any inbuilt defenses to it, so all the enemies are attacking you, and you've been given no extra defenses to defend against that. And charge is famous for charging you to your death, because enemies can and will attack and shoot you during the charge, even though you're moving at the speed of a freight train. So Ogryn is just generally kind of clunky, and if you've ever played Ogryn and had trouble dodging a dog or dodging a net, it's because you have this large frame, and that is probably the main thing that turns players off from playing Ogryn, is that he just is so different. He feels so bulky compared to the other classes, which is a great class fantasy, but it doesn't really help when you're trying to make a class on the same power level with the other classes in the game. So let's put these four detriments up here in the corner, and I'm going to leave them there for the rest of the video, and as we're going through the Fat Shark patch notes, we're going to be referring back to these and seeing if the changes are addressing one of these four main weaknesses, the four things that most people agree are holding Ogryn down. So now that we've addressed the Ogryn in the room, let's go ahead and jump right into the changes that are coming to Ogryn, and we'll be referring to the talent tree as they talk about it once we get to the actual talents. But let's go ahead and address the general stuff that's going on with Ogryn. Firstly, they address up here what their ideas are for these different paths. First of all, the Skullbreaker left branch, the heavy hitter side of the tree, is no longer all about heavy attacks. It is now about melee attacking in general. So light attack builds are back on the table. We can now use knives. Even some light attacking pickaxes are going to be much more viable because not all of these skills are linked to heavy attacking anymore. They just have different benefits when you light attack instead. The middle branch, the taunt branch, used to, and as well as stay close, used to be focused around perhaps providing some sort of support to the team and drawing fire away from the team, but there really wasn't any safe way to do that, and you didn't offer very much to the team in terms of survivability, because stay close is such a weak aura for in most cases, and the taunt ability doesn't make you any harder to kill, it just draws everything to attack you. So they've made some changes to that. And on the right branch, the Gunlugger, they've updated the keystone here to be better for any range build, which is great because that was my main criticism of it, which is that it pretty much was only designed for fast firing twin link stubber builds. And they've also focused on talents that are going to flesh out explosives, critical hits, or sustained fire builds, which is very nice because many of Ogryn's range weapons were completely locked out of using this tree at all because it didn't have anything that appealed to them. Let's go ahead and hop into the base things that they're bringing, just the general stuff. Some of the toughness has come off of the tree, and so to make up for it, we've bumped up the base toughness. If you can see here, this is the old Ogryn talent tree. There's two 25 toughness nodes at the top of the tree. Those are no longer there. This is one universal 25 toughness that everyone will take. Now, most builds did not have the extra points to grab this 25 toughness up here, although it was very nice because there's not a whole lot of other options on the Ogryn talent tree. But you will be losing some toughness if you were going down the middle path before. If you are going down the left path into heavy hitter, which I do recommend, this is going to be a benefit to you because that 25 base toughness is just, that's free toughness. And then there's a good amount on the tree still, and you get an extra point that you don't have to allot at the top of the tree. Thick skin. We removed a few defensive nodes. Speaking of the damage reduction nodes that there were all over the tree before, you get about 30% of them. And to make up for it, they've given Ogryn a bump to his innate tank passive. So Ogryn is just going to have 25% toughness damage reduction base, just as a baseline, which is very nice. He already had 20%, now he's got 25%. We like that, especially if we can still pick up some of those damage reduction nodes in the tree. Then he's got another big passive that's coming, which is pretty massive here. He has a new passive that shoves smaller enemies out of the way when dodging. This is something that many players have been calling for a while. It doesn't make any sense that small little poxwalker enemies can trap in a 900 plus pound Ogryn just by standing next to him. Now when you dodge, you push all the enemies in your direction out of the way, excepting non-elite special, large enemies. This means that, you will no longer get blocked by smaller enemies when you are trying to dodge out of the way of traps or hounds or whatever it is, and it's just awesome. It adds more CC to the kit as well because it's going to knock down all enemies around you, and that's always great to bring to the Ogryn. The rest of this blog post focuses on addressing the individual talents you'll find throughout the remainder of the tree. However, I have the new tree right in front of me here thanks to gameslantern.com. They are an excellent resource for Darktide players, and so we're going to go through it line by line and look at each and every one of these nodes and compare it to what the old versions of these nodes, if there was any, and generally talk about its usability and how I think it'll play out in the upcoming meta. Right here at the top of the tree, we have Linchpin. This is an existing node that exists on the other side of the tree. This is Coherency Toughness Regeneration. This is not a very powerful node. Coherency Toughness Regeneration is kind of a bad stat, especially on the Ogryn, because if enemies are within your threatened zones around you, you cannot benefit from Coherency Toughness Regen. That means for the Ogryn, who has double the size of these threatened zones, enemies can look like they are almost nowhere near you and still prevent you from getting any coherency regen. So we don't really love this node. Furious is another node that was not honestly all that good in the old talent tree. For every enemy you hit with the same melee attack, gain 2.5% damage on the next melee attack. This is good for like large sweeping hits, but that doesn't happen all the time, and many of the most fearsome enemies you're hitting them one by one, right? Only 2.5% damage to is not a very excellent number, especially if you're hitting 5 enemies at a time, which is a lot for many weapons to hit in one hit. That's only 12.5% damage. We can get a lot more elsewhere in the tree. Heavyweight. This is absolutely an S tier perk, and it's always has been. I'm glad they put it right in the center for everyone to take it. 30% damage, now that's a big damage number, against Bulwarks, Crushers, Plague Ogrins, and Reapers, some of the most dangerous enemies in the game. And this is flat damage, so it means it applies to your bleeds and damage over time effects as well. Also receive 30% damage reduction against the same, which is an immense amount of damage reduction, especially for a class that is already so tanky, and a class that has access to tons of damage reduction in the tree further down. Then we've got Smash 'em. Smash 'em has received a change. It used to be 20% toughness on hitting a single enemy with a heavy melee attack. Now it is 5% toughness after hitting a single enemy with a melee attack, increased to 15% if it's a heavy attack, which means that if you're using a light attacking build, you can regenerate 5% toughness every single time you spam that light attack. So the faster you can attack, the faster you can regenerate, but only on single targets. Then we have the best defense, which I'm very glad to see in this position as well, because before, these two nodes were locked over on the left side of the tree and you had to take Furious to get to them. The best defense replenishes 5% toughness after hitting multiple enemies with a melee attack, and it's increased to 15% on a heavy melee attack. The best advice is to take both, because sometimes when you are using a heavy attack, or any attack, you're going to hit multiple enemies accidentally, or you'll hit a single enemy accidentally. You want to get toughness in both situations. It'd be very nice, and it's only 1 point extra to grab it. Over here, Steady Grip. This is our range attackers. This is an already existing talent that's pretty much occupies the exact same place in the talent tree. It gives you 5% of your toughness back every second. The wording here is weird, but it gives you 5% back every second while you are bracing, meaning holding down right click or your aim button with your ranged weapon. This works better for some weapons than it does others. And then Towering Presence Coherency Radius, which is a fairly nice stat. This allows more allies on your team to benefit from your aura, or to count as incoherency for you, which can be very useful for one talent that's later down in the tree. But I like that it's off here to the side, because these are the core. These three right here are going to be the absolute essential for most Ogryn builds. These are very, very, very strong abilities. Then we go through this singular toughness node here, and you have your choice of 3 blitzes. You do not have to spend any additional points. Taking one of these blitzes does not lock you out from any further choices, because it all goes back to a single point down here as well. So we've got the same abilities as before. Big Friendly Rock, Frag Bomb, and Bombs Away. They all operate the exact same way. The only one of these that got a change was Bombs Away. It went from 2 frag bombs from 2 grenades to 3. And that's a pretty big deal, right? There it is right there. Sorry, right here. It went from 2 charges to 3, which is really, really nice, because, it sucks to take up a grenade kit when you're only getting 2 grenades out of it. And you can now take this blitz modifier that adds 3 grenades released. So it's going to release 50% more grenades. It already releases 6 mini grenades, and now it's going to release 9. So if you are wanting to use this, which seems like it's going to be pretty good, 3 of these with 1.5 times the potential is definitely going to outweigh the frag bomb. Now, the frag bomb was already only kind of tentatively in the race before, but yeah, this is going to be slightly better. But now Big Friendly Rock is back in the race as well, because before, Big Friendly Rock, as we look back here, was locked out of the discussion because Slam is not a very good passive. Soften Them Up is an amazing passive that benefits not only you and your team, but it benefits all sources of damage, including damage over time effects. So this was an amazing passive, which meant you were taking one of these two. But since it's all interconnected, Big Friendly Rock is back on the table. Big Friendly Rock got a very nice buff here in the terms of its wield time. It only takes a half a second to pull it out rather than a full second, which is awesome. You don't have to pre-draw it. You can just whip it out pretty quick. And then the time between throwing them, if you want to throw them back to back, got lowered by about 1/3. Very, very nice changes to that. It also has this add-on ability here now. If you hit a weak spot on an enemy or miss an enemy entirely, you get your rock back, and it has a 5-second cooldown. So you could just walk through the level beating enemies in the head with this rock, and you could just be a rock cannon. Seems pretty cool to me. Progressing further down, everyone has to take this 10% toughness damage reduction, and then we enter into the defensive web of the tree. I really like this area, because this area here, we have our 2 choices for some damage. Soften Them Up, which is always going to be a great choice. Soften Them Up gives enemies that are damaged by melee attacks, which is what it did before, even though it didn't say it. Enemies that are damaged by our melee attacks take 15% more damage. This is an awesome all-around more percentage multiplier buff. It can make bosses melt away. It's very, very, very good. And then we've got Payback Time over here. Payback Time is a new talent that sort of is supposed to be it is Payback Time down here, but it's a revamped version of it, and obviously it's a completely different part of the tree. Instead of 20% damage for 5 seconds after being hit by a melee attack, it is now being hit by any attack, so ranged included, and dodging. will trigger this and it'll give you 15% damage. So it's like a very light version of Zealot's Duelist ability where he gets finesse when he dodges an attack. This is going to give Ogryn's extra damage when they dodge or even when they're hit by attacks. So if we're just slugging it out, if we're getting into melee damage, this is going to give you damage. This gives everybody damage. So Soften Them Up is the better choice here, but you could end up taking both, especially if there's some talents down here that you want to get or bridge over. Remember that getting this is just a 1 point extra investment over coming down this right side here. Then we've got this whole row of defensive abilities right here. They don't have logos yet, they don't have icons determined yet, but this is, that's why the question mark is here. So on the left side here, which you have to take Soften Them Up to get, Pumped Up. 15% damage resistance while above 75% stamina. Now remember, we already have a baseline 25% damage resistance. There's another 10 right here. Now we're getting another 15% damage resistance. Remember, these are multiplicative, not additive. So it's not, we're not going to be invincible, but we'll be pretty close when we're above 75% stamina. This is very easy to do because slamming heavy attacks with a shield or anything like that doesn't take stamina. Only dodging, sprinting, and pushing and blocking takes stamina. So if you don't do any of that stuff, it's very easy to rest above 75% stamina, especially if you throw some stamina curios on yourself there. And that's an extra 15% DR. Very nice. For 1 point, I will take that. Then we've got 4% damage resistance from melee attacks on successful melee attack. Stacks 5 times. Now, I don't know if this has a duration. It doesn't seem to here. Time will tell, I suppose. But these stacks are going to be removed when you take damage from a melee attack. So ostensibly, you will hit enemies 5 times, and then the next time you get meleeed, you're going to take 20% less damage. And this is not, both of these talents are not toughness damage resistance. They are overall damage resistance, which means it applies to your health values as well, which is really, really big. If your toughness broken, this could save your life. 10% toughness damage resistance on elite kill or special kill for strongman right here in the dead center. Lasts 5 seconds. This is going to be better at higher difficulties. Obviously, elite kills and special kills come up more often there, and 10% DR isn't anything all that bad. Most notably, this is the crossover point. So if you went to the left for Soften Them Up, but you wanted to get back to Point Blank Barrage, or you went for Payback Time and wanted to get to Indomitable, this is the point where you'll cross over to get those. And it's not a bad talent. I'd say it's probably like B tier. Can't Hit Me Again. 20% damage resistance versus range for 2.5 seconds after getting hit by a range attack. I think that this might be something that you will really want in Havoc, because Havoc has a way of instantly shredding your toughness, and you'll get hit by a range attack and you'll get hit by a bunch more because enemies on Havoc 40 fire in 18 round bursts. So this will protect you from that for 2.5 seconds. It'll trigger and it'll sort of give you this extra 20% damage resistance for that range damage. Could be pretty nice. And finally, this non-defensive talent that's over here, kind of out of the blue. 15% reload speed when reloading an empty clip. Very nice for things like the kickback, which always has an empty clip because it has 1 in the mag. Down here, we've got an additional 5% toughness DR and 15 toughness on this side. You could end up picking up both of them if you wanted to go for a loyal protector or something. I wouldn't really recommend it, but you could. And then we're getting to our abilities themselves. So this is the time where we go back to our screen over here and we're going to talk about the base changes to these abilities that you cannot see on the talent tree. So these combat abilities have been changed. Each one of them received a change from very, very minor to very, very big. The Loyal Protector talent removed the Big Lungs talent. The Big Lungs talent, as you can see here, increased the radius of Loyal Protector by 50%. It went from 8 meters to 12 meters. This talent was pretty bad without that, to be honest with you. And, it was just a point tax. But the new version is just always has that. So that's very nice. They freed up a point for us. Bull Rush got the biggest change of all, though. Bull Rush now counts as dodging during charge, because previously this Bull Rush, which is an amazingly powerful ability, had one main weakness. You could get murdered while you were charging like a freight train. You could be shot to death by a single gunner on Havoc 40, like a single small gunner, and they could track you during this movement. Really, really annoying, and you could be trapped and all sorts of stuff. It says here that you will be protected from flying dogs, nets, and bullets. I'll have to wait and see if the nets thing actually remains to be true, because nets can catch you during zealot charge. It'll be interesting to see if Ogryn charge ignores that. That would be very, very powerful if it could, because you could always pull that out in a situation where you're stuck and you can't dodge the trapper. And then finally, Point Blank Barrage lowered the base reload speed from 70% to 65%, so it's actually a nerf, but that's because there's talents that are going to more than make up for that if you take the talent. Alright, now that we've talked about the baseline stuff for those abilities, let's talk about if anything has changed about their modifiers. And nothing has changed for Ogryn's Indomitable ability. All of these modifiers are the exact same. You can see here, they're in the same orientation. But something has changed for our lovely Loyal Protector, our taunt ability in the center here. No Pain. No Pain says that Loyal Protector replenishes 25% of your toughness, so an instant toughness boost, and an additional 0.5% each second for enemy affected. So if you have 20 enemies around you, you can max this out at 10% toughness replenishment every second for 10 seconds, which means you will fully replenish your toughness. Very, very cool. This is a very, very strong buff to this skill, because one of the main drawbacks of the taunt ability before was that you taunted everyone, and now in order to regenerate toughness, if you're being hit by these enemies that are hitting you, you have to be attacking them back, because that's the only way that Ogryns can regenerate toughness. Now you just taunt and you passively absorb a bunch of toughness from the enemies around you, and you do it for a full 10 seconds. This means that this is going to have amazing synergy with classes that can generate gold toughness, because if you are put into gold toughness by, say, a veteran shouting or something, any attack, whether it's a burster going off or an enemy hitting you, it will only lower your toughness. It'll take it to just being blue instead of being gold, right? And so then you can regenerate over that threshold and you'll be back into gold toughness again, and you won't be able to get damaged. Very, very strong, that constant regeneration buff. And this also means you can play defensively and get all of your toughness back. Say you're in a dangerous situation, you can't you can't take a hit, you can taunt and then just hold down block for a few seconds while your toughness gets back up, and then go on the offensive once you're fully toughnessed. This is already an existing modifier here, Valuable Distraction, and it's the same deal as it is before in the tree, although they don't show it on this, but these are mutually exclusive. You can either choose Go Again, which when you stagger an enemy, it replenishes percentage of your cooldown, or you can take Valuable Distraction, which gives enemies or makes enemies take more damage from all sources when they're taunted. Both of these are very, very strong. With Go Again, you have your taunt all the time, which could be good because you can regenerate a ton of toughness and you can really control the battlefield. But this base damage thing is amazing for bosses and large scale interactions, because it buffs every member of your team. So yeah, choose wisely. I think that both of these are very interesting and viable choices, and I really like that they made the overall radius 12 meters instead of 8 meters now, because we can save this point down here. Okay, going on to Point Blank Barrage. Point Blank Barrage, as you can see before, has Bullet Bravado, Light 'em Up, and Hail of Fire, and all of these have received changes. Bullet Bravado, or actually Bullet Bravado didn't receive a change, right? Yeah, Bullet Bravado is all the same, 2% toughness for every shot fired and 10% toughness on each reload, but Light 'em Up now stacks to 16 stacks and applies 4 stacks of burn while it's active. This is actually a significant nerf to this ability in particular. What was going on before was this was really only useful with one type of weapon, which is fast firing twin link stubbers, who could stack this up to 32 times. It doesn't say it here, but there's a 32 stack cap on this. So 32 stacks of burn is quite a lot. Melts most enemies away entirely. They realized that that was a little bit too powerful and really pigeonholed you to using exactly just the twin link stubber, but they also wanted it to be applicable to more weapons that might fire slower and still want that burn buff. So you can now get 4 stacks of burn and stack it up to 16 times, which means you only have to attack an enemy 4 times in this duration and you've got your max stacks of burn. It opens this ability up to many more weapons such as like the Ripper guns, which fire slower, which never would have been able to cap out the ability by attacking 16 times in the duration, but now totally can attack 4 times and get everything in front of them burning with 16 stacks of fire, which is still a good amount of fire. Then over here we've got Halo Fire. Halo Fire previously offered 30% rending. 30% rending is a absolutely huge amount. It allows you to one-shot crushers with the kickback if you headshot them. Really powerful. They realize that that amount of rending is kind of game breaking for a couple of weapons, which I can understand. So they reduced the rending considerably, but they also added damage to the range attack, which I think is nice. It will still benefit things like the kickback in the same way. It'll give you some ability to penetrate armor, but it won't make armor just absolutely irrelevant for enemies, and it's going to give you damage against everything else to compensate for that slight nerf. Okay, and now we're moving down here towards the auras. The auras, I want to draw your attention right here to this geometry. Any of these auras are available for any of the abilities now, thanks to the fact that this is a nice flat line. You can come down this way, you go all the way across and get bone breakers. I don't know why you do that, but you can, is the idea. And this is going to free us up to have more options for builds. Had that point to the top of the list here. Okay, so on the left here, we got rending, which is always a nice little node to get. Beat them back. 15% heavy melee on melee damage on a successful heavy melee attack. Last 5 seconds. This is awesome. I mean, I love heavy melee builds. I love slamming my shield edge into enemies' faces over and over and over. And this is going to give me 15% melee damage on every single attack as long as I keep it going. Thank you. Yes, please. Crunch. Crunch is a kind of nerfed / tweaked version of the already existing Crunch, which gives 40% impact and 40% damage when you fully charge, and I'm using air quotes here, fully charge a attack. And that takes way too long. It takes like 3 full seconds to fully charge a heavy melee attack, and that is just not how the game is played. Players were never holding it long enough. They thought they were, but there's like almost no way to tell if you've held it long enough. This is just scales up as you hold it, kind of like the current Blessing Thrust does, but obviously the Blessing is a lot less powerful as a result. So yeah, they nerfed the numbers because it's easier to trigger. Bone Breakers are exactly the same as it's always been. Strike True, 10% melee weak spot strength. This is a pretty nice little buff here. This is something that the Ogryn, as I said before, has had a deficit of for a long time. He doesn't have any benefit to actually aiming for heads, and this is going to increase, when it says melee weak spot strength like that, what it means for the game's calculations is that the base damage that you are going to deal to heads, or weak spots in general, is going to be times 1.1. This is not a weak spot damage multiplier, it's weak spot strength. It's better. It is better than a weak spot damage, unless they just use this term accidentally. But yeah, this is only shared by one veteran talent that has the same weak spot strength node. It's on the left side, bottom left side of the tree. Go check it out. Batter has seen a nice buff for certain builds. 2 stacks of bleed on melee hit, 4 stacks of bleed on heavy melee hit. So heavy meleeers, same as it ever was, still really good. 2 stacks of bleed, however, on light melee hit, that means we're opening this up to like cleaver builds that can just go in and be like, okay, you're bleeding up, you're taking your 16 stacks of bleed, like you're maxed on stacks of bleed, and then just watch everything around them fall down and die. That's been a big detriment to having like cleavers and stuff. They've fallen really far behind because they couldn't take batter, which is an insanely powerful ability because bleeds are, like, guaranteed bleeds are very powerful. They couldn't really make benefit of them, but like things like the shield absolutely could, because you can slam like 20 enemies with a single shield slam and all of them would get 4 stacks of bleed. Well, now you can just cleave through enemies and bleed them up and watch them all fall down and die. Seems like this is a really great design that they're opening this up to more weapons. Slam. This is moved from way up here at the top of the tree to all the way down here. And the way this is designed now is that this center tree, this little, Christmas tree shape here, is focused around, we're taunting, right? Probably we're using taunt, but we are staggering and pushing enemies, and we are weakening them up by shoving them around. So this is going to give us impact bonus to melee attacks, which is good, we more stagger, right? It's the only way you can get stagger is impact. It's not scaled on damage, it's just scaled on impact. Staggering an enemy with a melee attack replenishes 5% stamina with a 1 second cooldown. The reason they're giving you stamina for this is because they're expecting you to be shoving enemies at the same time. So if you look down here, brutish strength gives 4 stacks of brittleness on push. So we're going to shove this enemy. They're going to, perhaps they'll get staggered backwards by it, but if they don't, you're going to slam them in the face with your next attack, and they're going to get staggered. You're going to lose some stamina from shoving, but you're going to get it back from slam here. And that's sort of the cycle they're encouraging there. And brittleness is going to lower the defenses, which would be very nice if you could, come down here and take batter, right? Go over here. So come down the center here, go over here and take batter. And now you've got an enemy who is brittle, and they're going to take extra damage from that bleed. That's just a little pro tip for you there. Simple-minded, 30% corruption resistance. All right, I'll take it. For the little ones, this is a very interesting one. On ally getting toughness broken, which happens sometimes, gain 10% strength, 25% toughness damage reduction for 10 seconds. A nice duration on that, honestly. 30-second cooldown. My problem with this is that, it depends on your allies to fuck up and get their toughness broken. But the other one, perhaps the one that could save the game here, on ally getting knocked down, gain stun immunity and 25% revive speed for 10 seconds. I'm imagining a build or like an idea with this where you take this and then you also take 3 curios that all have revive speed on them, so you have 55% revive speed when someone gets knocked down. You just walk over and be like, yep, you're up. Okay, get the fuck up. Like, yeah, that's what I'm imagining there. That could be kind of fun. Unbreakable. This is so interesting. Your perfect blocks, which is a concept we haven't seen explored in this game yet, but the game can tell when you throw up the block just in the nick of time. Your perfect blocks can block all melee attacks. So crush your overheads. Incoming, you've just got your knife, and then you go dink. And yes, you'll take stamina damage, but it just blocks the attack. You don't take any health, you don't take any toughness damage. On perfect block, gain 20% melee damage on the next attack, so then you retaliate with it. Very cool stuff. That this is going to really encourage like taunt skills where you get these enemies to attack you and then you block them and then you retaliate. Bam, done. Stay close. Okay, hold on a second. Looks like to me as a casual observer, you might be saying, stay close says 15% toughness replenishment for you and allies and coherency, and it used to be 25%. What happened? Well, in reality, what happened here was that the old talent is misleading. The old talent used to read 25% toughness replenishment, but what it actually meant was coherency toughness replenishment, which is terrible. It's just the passive regeneration you get when you're standing around and nothing's happening. The new one is 15% toughness replenishment, which is a real toughness replenishment. Toughness replenishment is a multiplier. So, let me put it to you like this, and it's all, right? So all toughness replenishment. Let me put it to you like this. If you are in the radius of this, and you're a zealot, and you have your charge ability, and you're at 0 toughness, and you charge, well, you normally expect to get 50% of your toughness back. But with this, you're going to get 15% of 50% added on, right? So you'll get 57.5% of your toughness back. If you are an Ogryn and you take this talent here and you taunt 20 enemies and you're getting 10% per second, now you're getting 11.5% per second for 10 seconds. So a very nice, just general buff to the toughness replenishment you get. Honestly, this is in competition for being one of the best things of the 3 because a lot of classes, they like to replenish lots of toughness, and 15% for everybody is pretty decent, like honestly, especially compared to some of these other ones. Okay, ammo stash over here. Oh, did we go? Yeah, we went all the way down. Okay, ammo stash, 25% ammo. We've seen this before. We've also seen Big Boom before, 27.5% radius for explosions. We have not seen Concentrate before. I'm not thrilled about this. This seems like it's just for Ripper guns. It gives you sway reduction, spray reduction, and 15% recoil reduction when bracing your ranged weapon, but lose stamina per second, 3/4 of a stamina per second. Seems like it's just for Ripper guns because those are about the only guns I can think of for Ogryns that really have any problems with sway and spread and recoil when they're being braced. Yeah, seems like about right for me. There's nothing really there like that I'm like drawn to for making a build. Over here, though, this does have me interested. Fire away. Your explosions apply 1 stack of burn, 2 stacks at close range, max stacks 8. So you can now apply burn to enemies with your grenade gauntlet. You can shoot 4 grenades into a group of enemies, and they'll be burning. The thing I'm also interested with this is there's already that Rumbler blessing that applies bleeds to close range explosion enemies. So you could ostensibly shoot these grenades into a group of enemies, and they will start bleeding and burning. And you could magnify this effect with like things like taunt. You could like taunt enemies and then shoot grenades at your feet and get them all burning and bleeding, and then they could just die to that because the taunt is magnifying the effect of the burns and bleeds. Pretty cool. We've got Coward Culling. Coward Culling is the exact same, except it has had this node right here, the suppression dealt node, wrapped into the base effect of Coward Culling. So it's now 20% damage against suppression, blah, 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 plus 25% suppression dealt for just you. Oh my gosh, and we're getting right down to it, guys. We're in the last home stretch here. My voice is holding in there. Okay, starting this left tree here, the heavy hitter tree. What was already the best tree in the game, and it's still going to be a heavy hitter. We're starting off the top of the tree with 10% melee damage. I'll take it. Too stubborn to die. Staying the same as it always was in the same position. Below 33% health, you have a 100% toughness replenishment, meaning it's doubling the amount of toughness you replenish. Pretty cool, right? So every other effect, like up here when you're getting 15% toughness from a heavy attack, now you're getting 30. You have to be below 130 your health though. Delight and Destruction, 8% damage resistance per bleeding enemy up to stacks 4 times, right? So this is 32% damage resistance. Gonna be really, really easy to get this with the new batter being able to be inflicted on light attacks. So like light attack cleaver users, gonna go in there and hit a couple enemies. You only need 4 enemies to be bleeding near you, and you've got 32% damage resistance on top of the 25% you have as a base for just playing this class, the 10% and the 5% you have as a base from just playing this class, and whatever else you have up here, like insane amounts of damage resistance on this class right now. Frenzy Blows, 2% melee attack speed on chain hit for 5 seconds, stacks 5 times. That's 10% attack speed. Attack speed is very good, very, very good. We like this. We very, very, very much like this. Dominate, 10% rending for 10 seconds on elite. This already exists. And then behind it, 2.5% range damage on melee kill, last 8 seconds, max stacks 6. So yeah, the idea here, as per the title Bash and Blast, is that you are going to kill enemies with your melee, and then once you've maxed it out, you're going to swap over and shoot one range shot. I just don't know if the 2.5%, which stacks up to a total of 15%, is going to be enough, reward for, swapping to my weapon. I'd probably just rather keep meleeing if it's all the same to you. Implacable, same as it's always been, 15% damage reduction while charging melee attacks. No stopping me. The same thing as it was before. However, remove 100% of heavy melee attack movement speed penalties. So this is a thing that is very annoying for playing heavy attack builds, is that you slow way down. So if you've ever used the Ogryn's shield and you raise that shield edge up to bash, you start crawling around. Well, now you move at the full walking Ogryn speed while you're heavy attacking. I think this is going to be an automatic inclusion for heavy attack builds from here on out. This is awesome. Even though being uninterruptible is only a thing for like cleavers and I think like one other weapon, it can't happen to you if you have a shield. But yeah, that itself is awesome. The fact that you can stay so mobile while you're doing it means you're gonna get hit less while you're charging your attack too. Heavy hitter has had a big change here. Okay, it used to be 5% melee attack. Let's go to it. 5% melee attack or 5% damage for 7.5 seconds on heavy attack hit, stacked 5 times. So 25% damage for 7.5 seconds when you're heavy attacking. Now it is not related to heavy attacking anymore. You gain 3% melee damage on melee attack hit, stacking up to 8 times, so that's 24% at the max. You're losing 1% there, and you gain 2 stacks in a heavy melee hit. So you can stack it faster if you're heavy attacking, right? You can stack it in just 4 hits instead of 5, and you'll get 24% instead of 25%. I think losing that 1% there isn't going to be a very big deal, considering some of these add-ons are very nice. Don't feel a thing. Heavy hitter also grants 1.5% toughness damage reduction for each stack. So this means 1.5 times 8 is 12% toughness damage reduction. They are just throwing this shit at us. We're going to have it all the time, right? You can hit an enemy with a melee attack once every 7.5 seconds, I hope. That is an extra 12% toughness damage reduction. When you're at 8 stacks, you also gain 10% attack speed. This was an already existing thing when it was capped out, but we love this. This is super powerful. Heavy Hitter also grants 15% toughness replenish from melee kills for each stack. I think these are, it's hard to tell, but I think these might be mutually exclusive. This is going to be the better one, right? We don't, like, this has a depreciating value because we have so much other toughness damage reduction in this tree, but 15% toughness replenishment for each stack means the max stacks for this is, let's see, it's 120%. So the current thing is that it's 100%, right, from melee kills. So now instead of 10% that you would normally get, you're going to get 12% of your toughness back every melee kill you get when Heavy Hitter is fully stacked up. That's nuts. That's a lot of toughness. And then down here we have 2 further choices. Heavy Hitter grants 15% cleave, so that would be 120% cleave for each, when it's fully stacked, or 80% impact when it's fully stacked. I think the impact is going to be really nice here, because impact is the only thing that affects stagger, and the more enemies are staggered, the less they can attack you, or you could not take either because they're not directly related to damage and just focus on murdering. All right, going into the middle tree here, we've got 25 toughness, nice juicy 25 toughness. Attention Seeker, one of my favorite talents in the whole game, pushing or blocking enemies taunts for 8 seconds, we already have this. No Hurting Friends though, 2.5% strength on damage taken by you or allies in coherency. It does clarify in the post over here, let me find it, friends, that this is health damage taken. I don't know how I feel about this. I think that might be not great, right? It lasts 10 seconds and you can get some more toughness damage reduction when you're stacked up. But how often are you really taking toughness damage, or health damage, I mean? You really shouldn't be, especially if you're playing, optimally as an Ogryn and have other members in your team. You shouldn't be taking health damage. So I don't think this will be getting triggered very much by very competent teams. Then we've got weapon swap speed in the center here. Strange space for this weapon swap speed thing. That's one thing I do have an issue with. Behind that, though, I think this is for like hybridizing, right? We've got no pushover down here. We know this. This is awesome. This is an awesome node. Makes enemies like fall down, makes bulwarks throw their shield backwards. Over here on the right side, this is get stuck in, already existing node. When you use your ultimate, everyone can rush forward for 4 seconds and don't get CC'd. Bruiser. Bruiser is an already existing thing. However, it's received a change in how it functions. Currently, Bruiser rewards you 4% of your cooldown whenever you or an ally in coherency kills an elite enemy. It's a really, really good ability. But think about it like this. 4% of a 60-second cooldown is, well, let's do the math real quick. Hold on, let me pull up my phone. 60 second times 0.04, right, is 2.4 seconds. Right? What this does is it gives you 100% ability cooldown regen for 3 seconds. So it's going to start a second timer, and it's going to say, okay, over the next 3 seconds, give this guy 3 extra seconds, basically. It's going to start a second cooldown timer. This is really, really good. Now, it remains to be seen if this stacks at all, or if it's not like if I killed 2 elite enemies, do I lose 6 seconds off my time, or does it not? It only counts from the last one that I killed. That'll be the main thing that decides whether or not this is like a really big buff. However, for Indomitable, this is a huge buff, because for Indomitable, a 30-second cooldown with a 4-second discount every time you kill an elite enemy is only 1.2 seconds, and this is going to get you back 3 seconds bare minimum every time an elite enemy gets killed. So we're going to regenerate so many more Indomitables with this thing than we would with the old Bruiser. Hard Knocks, enemies staggered by your melee attacks take 15% more melee damage for 5 seconds. Very, very similar to what we have up here with Soften Them Up, but it requires the enemies to be staggered. Should be fairly easy because we can stagger with our pushes and we can stagger with all of our, stagger from stuff like Slam. Middle Tree, not gonna lie, looking pretty nice to me right now. Won't Give In, 20%, this already exists, 20% damage reduction for each knockdown or incapacitated enemy. Yeah, that's fine. As if we needed more damage reduction, right? Feel No Pain. Okay, Feel No Pain. It's here, folks. Feel No Pain actually kind of might be good now. I'm glad to say it. So it's the same as before. You have your 10 stacks of Feel No Pain. Every time you take damage, you lose a stack, and you get one back every 3 seconds. Now, what it is every stack gives you 2.5% toughness replenishment and 2.5% damage reduction. As if we needed more damage reduction, but here we go. 25% damage reduction and 25% toughness replenishment. Now, what this means is not the same as what it says right here. When it says toughness replenishment in the old Feel No Pain, what it meant was coherency toughness replenishment. Feel no. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm down here. Feel no. So this is all toughness replenishment, by the way. This means that when you take this, right, if you have Feel No Pain and you have Stay Close and you taunt a group of enemies and you have 10% per second, you are now regenerating 14% of your toughness per second because you have 15% here and you have an extra 25% here if you're at full stacks. The same strongest over here where you push enemies and get your stacks back, that's fine. We're going to be pushing a lot, so that might be pretty good. Pained Outburst has been changed though. No longer is it 20% toughness when you reach 0 stacks with 30-second cooldown. It is 50% toughness when you reach 5 stacks or below. So you only have to lose 5 stacks, which is very, very good, right? That means you don't have to lose all of your stacks. For, if you lose all your stacks with the basic Feel No Pain, you're fucked. Your situation is absolutely fucked. This one sees that your situation is turning bad. It gets you to 5 stacks and goes, hold on a second. Here's 50% toughness and everything has to get off of you. Really nice. Honestly, this is way, way, way better. And then toughest. As if the 2.5% toughness replenishment wasn't enough. Now if we take this node, you multiply all the toughness you regenerate, either from getting melee kills. Let me put it to you this way. If you get a melee kill, right, you regenerate 5% toughness. If you have this fully stacked up, that goes to 7.5%. If you hit an enemy with a heavy melee attack, with Smash 'em, if you hit a single enemy with a heavy melee attack, you get 15% toughness. If you have this, it goes to 22.5% toughness. And then if you're running taunt with that, you can be regenerating, you could be regenerating 16.5% of your toughness per second for 10 seconds. This is a huge, huge toughness replenishment buff. And the toughness is just going to be pouring in on you. And remember that other teammates can regenerate your toughness too, right? All toughness replenishment also applies to coherency in case you wanted to rely on that. But yeah, this is amazing. It's going to make, getting your toughness back way, way smoother. Honestly, very tanky center ability here now. Kind of in competition with Heavy Hitter, even though Heavy Hitter has some pretty good stuff too. Okay, over here in the range tree, which before was, not great. Let's see if they fixed it. Pacemaker. This has been reduced from 5 enemies with a single attack to 3. So yeah, this can be used by many more weapons now. Before, it had this problem where for burst weapons or rapid fire weapons, you had to spray across multiple enemies and get all these hits super fast. Hitting 3 enemies is way easier. This also works with enemies that can punch, or attacks that can punch through multiple enemies. So this is fine. Reloaded and ready, 15% damage for 8 seconds on reload. Remember, we can take this on top of, where is it? Where did that thing go? Who knows? There was one on the tree somewhere here. Oh yeah, there it is. 50% reload speed when reloading an empty clip. This is going to be great. We'll throw this with our kickback. We're going to be reloading super fast. We're going to get range damage in every reload. Yeah, it's going to be very, very nice. That stacks with that. So we'll have 30% reload when we're hitting multiple enemies with our kickback. Pretty good times. All these are the same except for Massacre. Massacre is going up from 1% crit chance to for 10 seconds to 1.5% crit chance for 12 seconds, stacking 8 times. So that's 12% crit chance. 12% crit chance isn't bad, right? The problem with Ogryn weapons is that many of them were not statted to do much crit damage at all. So that will be something we'll have to talk about in the video next time, because obviously this one is already, about as long as Avatar and Avatar 2 put together. Whether or not these weapons are going to be tweaked in any significant way to make critical attacks worth it at all. Okay, Now we have to look at Burst Limiter Override, Blow. Blow has been changed. It has not been changed in a way that I'm like all that happy with, but what it's doing now is instead of having a 12% chance to trigger, it has a 15% chance to trigger and not consume that ammo, the lucky bullet effective before. When you get ranged kills with it, though, you also get 2% range damage. It stacks 10 times and lasts 10 seconds. Now, that's a good duration for a buff, and this means that you can just generally use this with range weapons, and you don't really even have to worry about the Burst Limiter Override activating. Yeah, it might activate. It's got like a 1 in 8 chance of activating now, which is pretty decent, but you're also getting 20% range damage, which is good, right? We'll take that. We'll take that. We've over here got critical strike damage. This is going to help to buff the damage that crits do, so it might be valuable to do crits. But again, it comes down to how they change the weapons. Spray and Slay, 15% melee damage and 7.5% melee attack speed for 6 seconds after emptying your clip. I mean, so obvious that this is going to be perfect for kickback. You shoot a kickback, yeah, your clip is empty because you had a clip of 1. Or the Rumbler, you had a clip of 1. And then you get melee damage and melee attack speed. Hybrid stuff is very, very viable with these trees. I'm loving that now. Okay, down here, back off. On killing melee attack, gain 10% chance to trigger Lucky Bullet. Now this is what I'm talking about, right? We want a free shot on our next shot, stacks 10 times, and there's no duration on it. So when I'm running around with my hybrid, kickback / bruiser build, I can take this and I can get melee kills and then pull out my kickback and I can get a free double shot. It's guaranteed to trigger after 10 kills. Pretty nice. 100% ability cooldown reduction for 4 seconds when Lucky Bullet triggers. It's been reduced quite a bit in terms of the ability cooldown, but it's so much easier to trigger Lucky Bullet, so that makes sense. You're going to get free 4 seconds of cooldown whenever you trigger this, so yeah, that's pretty nice. A guaranteed critical. It remains to be seen if they'll make any changes to the critical stats on some of these weapons. I mean, obviously, this crit stuff is going to be very nice with like the new heavy stubbers that actually do have critical stats. Bullet Storm, 15% range damage to you and allies in coherency on Lucky Bullet. That's something, right? I don't know if I'd necessarily take it. And Blow also grants 1.5% fire rate per stack, so up to 15% fire rate for what that is. Okay. And that is everything, guys. Just going to scan the notes here and see if I didn't miss anything. But yeah, that is everything that's going on in the Ogryn talent tree. Overall, what are my thoughts? Overall, my thoughts are that the interconnectivity up here, to address our first point up top, which is that there are not builds available because it kind of pigeonholes you into like 1 or 2 things. The build diversity in this is going to be a huge, huge, huge improvement over what we have. Right off the top of the tree, we have choices for our blitz. We have choices for our ultimate abilities and how they play, and we have choices for our auras. And look at the amount of pathing you can take to get to your keystones. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's like 8 different ways to get to the Feel No Pain keystone, depending on which nodes you want to take. And that's the sort of choices that we really, really like to have because that's what defines builds. So I think that in terms of build selection, we've got it. In terms of defenses, if I haven't pointed it out enough, this class is now absolutely drowning in toughness damage reduction. There is so much toughness damage reduction between this line of 4 things right here, stuff on some of these nodes, some of the stuff down here for heavy hitter and Feel No Pain. The baseline toughness DER went up from 20 to 25. The toughness damage reduction is insane, and now we have to consider that this whole middle line of the tree, which before was to me kind of a joke that like, yeah, you can get some toughness and coherency back, whatever. Now it's all toughness replenishment, which means that this class can just poop out toughness like crazy. Like this, you're just gonna see like the Ogryn's bars going like a Halo, like someone just picked up the Overshield buff in Halo. It's just gonna be like unstoppably going up all the time, and it's just gonna be very, very, very hard to kill him, especially at lower difficulties. Like there's no way enemies are getting through that level of toughness generation, plus all the additional base toughness that he's got. So I think that this class is going to be so much harder to kill. Plus you've got Loyal Protector that now grants you toughness instantly when you proc it and over time. You've got Indomitable that no longer sets you up to get instantly murdered because you can't be touched while you're doing it. Yeah, those sort of things are very, very, very potent for his survivability. Then we got to talk about damage stuff. Now, a lot of this is going to be something I'll address in my next video when I'm talking about the changes they are proposing for weapons. But overall, what I'm looking at here is that they're opening up the viability of more types of weapons. And I'll just spoilers because I have read the post on weapons. They are making it so that these weapons have headshot multipliers, right? So some of this, some of the weakness of these is that like aiming for heads does nothing. And they're making it so that light attacks and all that stuff, like those things are feasible now to use with this side of the tree. And there's so many more sources of damage, such as bleeding and burning, that can be applied by a more vast array of weapons than we had before. Before, if you wanted to apply burning, you were literally just using twin lick stubber, and that was it. Now you can do it with grenades. If you wanted to apply bleeding, you had to be using heavy attacks. Now you can do it with light and melee attacks and grenades. You know, there's lots of different ways of dealing damage and magnifying damage as well, which is something I like to see the Ogryn getting into. And then the final point here to address the clunkiness, I think that's something that they are making strides to addressing. It might require further tweaks, but the fact that the passive is now shoving smaller enemies out of the way is a really, really good step in the right direction. It's something that people have been asking for a long time. It's like, why can Ogryns not just like step on the fucking heads of these poxwalkers and pop them? They're not going to quite give us that, but yeah, the fact that you can like just dodge into enemies and they'll be like, ah, what the fuck, ow, makes a lot more sense, and it's going to make it much more easy to move around. The fact that Indomitable is no longer going to get you murdered when you use it is pretty amazing. But yeah, the rest of it remains to be seen and play tested with. But this has just been my overall thoughts, guys. So let me know what you think down in the comments about this. I am very excited and optimistic about it. I can't wait, honestly, to make some builds, especially with this Cinder Tree. I'm so interested to see how stupid tanky you can get with that. Anyway, let me know what you think down there. If you enjoyed the video and you like this sort of long form analytical video, and you like my stuff in general and you want to support me directly, you can always become a member. Here's a list of my fine members scrolling by right now. They pay a couple dollars a month. I give them, you know, some words of wisdom, encouragement, and I show them, most importantly, pictures of my lovely dog. He is cute. He's adorable. He's a miniature schnauzer. So if you want to see that, you know, there's a couple that you get on the standard feed, but you get a lot of them if you want to become a member. And obviously, it makes me very happy too. You can feel like part of the community. So I appreciate y'all. And I will see you very soon for the part 2 of this video, where we're going to be going over the changes to Ogryn's arsenal. See you then. Mr. E out.